After the rock door to Devon's lair closed, we stepped out of the van as the lights flickered to life, one section at a time, each acting almost as a spotlight on Devon's creations. I stepped forward in front of the van and absorbed my surroundings. It was magnificent. To my immediate left was a long, ancient-looking wooden workbench. To my right was a display area with carbon fiber-blended body armor and shields. In front of me was a rack with various swords and large, multi-function blade-based instruments of destruction. Closer to the center of the room was a bench with a bullet press and various supplies for making ammunition. Some of the shell casings were far, far bigger than any bullet I had ever seen. Propped against the table was another rack with some wicked-looking guns and what I could only describe as handheld cannons.
"See this one?"
Devon said, as we began to walk the length of the bench. He held up a lightweight club that looked to be made of aluminum. It looked very similar to a baseball bat, but under a transparent sleeve on the barrel were several nodules, roughly the size and shape of an Oreo cookie. He walked to the center of the room, where there were, oddly enough, several demon-looking dummies in a circle. They were made of framework, exoskeleton, and shaped ballistic gel. The heads were watermelons, and each had a crude cardboard cutout of a human face strapped to it with a rubber band. I squinted to get a better look. Piers Morgan, Susan Sarandon, Nancy Grace, Kanye West, all the Kardashians, plus Bruce and Caitlyn Jenner. He cut me off there.
"Yep. A fine example of the fact that even if you swap your sex organs, the asshole in you don't change. Check this shit out,"
he said as he removed the protective sleeve from the business end of the club. Devon walked to the center of the dummies, dropped into a half squat, and took a hard swing to his left, making contact with the torso area of Piers Morgan. There was a small explosion from the bat that blew a 6-inch hole completely through the gel dummy.
"He's never had a spine anyway,"
Devon yelled. He immediately swung the other way, making contact with the other side of the bat right into the knee of Susan Sarandon. The leg blew completely off, and the dummy toppled over.
"Now she can't look down on everyone."
He rotated the bat a bit for another nodule as he took a huge undercut into the dummy in front of him, making explosive contact with exact precision on Nancy Grace's nose and mouth.
"That one don't need explaining,"
he said with a chuckle. He continued the assault, smacking Kanye across the feet. He had actually strapped a pair of Yeezys onto the dummy. They weren't even knockoffs. I cried a little inside.
"Ugly as fuck and even more stupid. I better not see him on your feet again, kid."
He popped the Kardashians one by one, then stopped short of taking a shot to Mr./Mrs. Jenner.
"I don't even know what I want to do to Brucelyn yet. I'm just waiting for some inspiration."
Holy shit, I said as I slowly surveyed the aftermath. Bits of gel and melon were everywhere, including a gob that had hit me right in the forehead.
"Badass, right?"
he said with a look of pride.
"I have a tiny bit of explosive over top of a little spring inside. So when the bat makes hard contact with something, the spring compresses against the bat and provides compression for the explosion. It's concentrated directly out of the nodule, so the energy is focused into the point of contact. Pretty similar to how a bullet leaves a gun.
Mesmerized, I said. Dude, that's incredible. You could fight your way out of close quarters combat with only a little bit of space to swing. He grinned again.
I call it a concussion bat. I take great pleasure in my weapon building. But as of right now, I've never had to use any more than my old wooden bat and brass knuckles. I've been waiting on these fools to step up. Kinda like Allen Iverson didn't need to practice. Man, these demons ain't made me practice. I never practice.
I looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Something here sounds familiar. Practice? We talking about practice?
Yeah, buddy. We talking about practice.
Anyway, he led me to the rack of bladed weapons and selected one with all the pomp and circumstance of a king, presenting a newly knighted soldier.
This one is for you, kid.
It looked like a reaper scythe, but the blade was a bit shorter. The handle was angled a bit to balance out the other end, which had two sideways tridents making a T shape at the end of the handle. At the back side of the blade was a thick, flat edge with a blunt end. Creating a T shape at the opposite end of the long staff were two back-to-back tridents with foot-long, extremely thin tips that looked well designed to penetrate easily and remove quickly. Devin gestured and led me over to the Kardashians.
You do any training with a bow staff during all that martial arts?
Sure did, I said with a huge smile. I slowly began to swing the scythe, then added in some footwork and twists. The balance was incredible. The movements were effortless, and the ends were weighted for maximum power at the point of impact. After a couple minutes getting acclimated, I took shots at the Kardashians. I didn't get creative with any of my aiming points, although taking shots at their comically giant butts did cross my mind. The blade and tridents cut through with absolute precision, slicing and dicing the gel like it was nothing. I was even able to twirl it overhead like Snipes in the Blade movies. It was so effortless, yet powerful, and I was getting a huge rush from wielding such a weapon. Devin raised an eyebrow.
Damn, kid. I knew you had more in you, but I gotta admit, you're impressing the hell out of me. But now, the showstopper.
Devin opened a huge steel safe with a foot-thick door and walls. Inside was even more steel, giving way to an open area only about 6 inches in square. Inside were several small vials of, you guessed it, green liquid. He held it out in front of me. I backed up, waving it away. Dude, I don't care what that shit is. I'm not taking it.
You have to. Look, kid. You're a pretty tough son of a bitch for a pussy hipster. I'm pretty sure I heard your testicles drop when you cut that bastard's throat. They didn't make as big a sound when they hit the floor as I would have preferred, but they still dropped, and that means I can count on you. You have to do this. I said it before, you're on their list now too. They're gonna hit us with everything they have this time, and even as tough as you are, you won't survive. If you don't survive, it's gonna be a lot harder for me to get out of this with my pretty face intact. And I'm too damned handsome to leave this earth yet. Trust me, you're gonna love it.
I knew he was right. I couldn't beat these big green assholes. So maybe if this stuff could make me a little faster, or give me a little more endurance. I could make it through this. Or at the very least, I wouldn't go down like a little bitch. Fuck, man. Okay, let's do this. Wait, what does it do? Too late. The moment I opened my mouth to say do, he squeezed about an ounce from an eyedropper right into my mouth. He smiled.
Down the hatch.
As expected, it was nasty.
Ugh.
Tastes like pineapple mixed with vomit.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty for me too. So I'll make them eat a ton of pineapple for a few days before the slaughter and draining,
he said nonchalantly. I immediately began to dry heave. It's blood? Devin gave me a duh look.
The fuck you think it was? Jello shots?
At first, I felt nothing at all. Then, I was overcome with ravenous hunger. Devin was ready for it. He opened a refrigerator packed full of protein shakes and began taking them out and opening them.
Drink all of them. It's my special recipe.
I didn't even hesitate. I downed shake after shake non-stop, like Joey Chestnut on the 4th of July. I could feel my body processing the protein at lightning speed, and my muscles began to grow. The hunger was intense, and when it subsided, I had downed 23 shakes. Yet my stomach felt completely normal. A surge of energy went through me, and I felt the blood delivering nutrients through every vein and capillary in my body. When everything settled down, the muscles of my arms and legs had swelled as much as 2 inches around. I felt tremendous power throughout. Devin went into scientist mode.
Demon blood is very potent. It ain't much for them because their muscles can't process and deliver nutrients as efficiently as a human's. The blood ramps up our endocrine systems to absurd levels. It don't work as fast on me because of my demon half, but I don't have to take it nearly as often. For you, the effects will only last a couple of days, but a little bit of it will never leave you.
My eyes suddenly bulged out as the unused remains of almost 3 gallons of liquid hit me. Dude, I have to pee now. Devin let loose his signature laugh and pointed to the bathroom. 5 fucking minutes later, I emerged, feeling like Superman. I had to test it, so I ran to his van. I crossed the 50-foot-long room in 3 strides. Looking around for something to do, I finally reached under the big van, grabbed the frame, and picked up one end of it to the height of my shoulders before gently setting it back down. I jumped as high as I could and easily touched the 15-foot ceiling. I was losing my mind with excitement. Wild-eyed, I dropped and did push-ups for a full 5 minutes and didn't even feel any muscle fatigue. Without even standing, I looked up at Devin with serious intensity.
Let's go kick some ass! Shit,
he said suddenly.
Look!
Devin pointed at some video monitors hanging from the ceiling. He had 360 degrees of visibility and 100 yards of clear land in every direction. He didn't even need to zoom. I had the vision of a fucking eagle after that squirt of demon blood. They were clearing the tree line, creeping up on the building from all directions. Demons, and a few black SUVs. Typical, I know. I presumed held some humans in charge of the operation. There appeared to be 30 or so, and this time they were armed with various types of clubs and blades. Something suddenly dawned on me. With as many times as you've run train on them, Why the fuck have these guys not started using guns? Without looking away from the monitors, Devin said,
It's their vision. It ain't bad, but it's not as good as ours from a functional perspective. Ask them to tell you what colors your eyes are from at least 100 feet away. They can do it. Ask them to hit you with a baseball bat from 20 feet out, and they look like that time 50 Cent threw out the first pitch for the Mets. Anytime they try to aim at something, their eyes fight for dominance. Even with close quarters combat, they can see you clear as day, but they have to be real close to hit you. Remember that.
Okay, what now? I said as I looked away from the monitors and surveyed the room, trying to decide what we might need for this fight. Devin looked around as well as he spoke.
Well, we can hang out here for a while. Even a rocket-propelled grenade won't burst through this place on the first try. It'll take them a bit, but they will eventually penetrate our asses.
He laughed.
Oh wait, not like that. Well, with a haircut like that, I don't know for sure which team you play for, but they definitely ain't penetrating mine.
Funny guy, I said as I gave him a stiff punch to the shoulder. Devin checked the cameras again.
Okay, we're almost ready.
He walked over and picked out some of the body armor and tossed it to me.
Try that one out. I made it just for you. I even put a dick TP in there for you. Size small, right?
He winked. I glared back as I stepped into a black and gray bodysuit with armored shoulders and knees. I could feel a tactical vest built in there, but it molded to my body perfectly. When I moved, it flexed. When I wasn't moving, it was as hard as carbon fiber. You know something, Devin? If I wasn't so hopped up on demon blood right now and itching to fuck some shit up, I'd pull that Caitlyn Jenner mask over your stupid face and bitch slap you.
That's the spirit, kid. Get mad. Real mad. Like the time you caught your daddy in high heels and realized he'd never be able to teach you how to throw a baseball.
He quickly turned back around.
Here we go,
he said as he flipped open a lid on the video screen's control panel. Suddenly the screen switched to views from the tree line. Devin flipped one of several red switches, and I heard whirring sounds coming from the exterior of the building. Looking back at the monitors, I could see machine gun turrets pop out of the concrete roof. The demons were only about 50 feet out at this point. A few seconds later, the big room was filled with a roar of machine gun fire while we watched from the tree line view as they began running all over the place. The big guns were ripping through flesh all over the place.
You know we gotta clean that up, right?
Devin said. The guns continued to shred demons right and left, but quite a few still remained when the ammo ran dry. We watched, laughing, as they ran their painfully slow asses to the building and realized there was no door. There was nothing to attack, nothing to beat down. There was just nothing. They turned back to the vehicle's tree line and waved or shrugged their shoulders. They were all staying by the building, afraid if they went back for Plan B, they would be shredded by the machine guns again. Devin spoke into a microphone on the control panel.
Goddamn, boys. That plan went about as well as Obamacare. What you gonna do for round 2?
He cut off the mic.
Okay, here comes the next shot.
We watched as they rolled out a military gun. I don't know shit about military weapons, but the barrel was as big as the end of a baseball bat, and it had its own little trailer. It slowly rotated our way. If you picture the building as a clock, when we arrived to the lair earlier, the garage door had come out of the concrete at the 6 o'clock position. We currently were watching the monitors at the 12 o'clock position, and the big gun was pointed at roughly the 3 o'clock side. The gun was ready, and a couple of humans set it up to fire. Devin looked over at me.
Don't sweat it. That one ain't big enough to do much damage. Might rattle your teeth a bit.
At about that moment, the gun fired. Devin was right. The building shook a bit. But when we zoomed the tree-line cameras, it had barely put more than a foot-wide chip in the exterior wall.
Bitches,
Devin said nonchalantly, as he clicked over to the other cameras. The demons had joined up to wade out of the way of the shots as the gun pumped more our way. This was going to take a while. It was weird though, because it looked like every remaining demon was on the side where the gun was aiming, instead of as far away as possible. Devin sat down and propped his giant boots up.
Tell you what, kid. These guys are probably gonna change tactics in a bit. But I got a few more tricks up my sleeve. Shit!
Devin's last monitor click showed our 9 o'clock position, and about 50 yards out was a semi-truck, sans trailer, and barreling towards us like a rocket. The front end was modified with a giant ram, and at the center of that ram was a huge spike. The big gun had been a ruse, so they could hit us with the truck without further countermeasures from Devin's arsenal.
Grab your shit!
He screamed as he snatched up the gear he had standing by. I managed to grab the Reaper and another concussion bat just before the truck slammed into its target. The impact was tremendous, and just enough to bust through the wall and leave a bit of room on the sides for the troops to push through. The demon driving was tossed through the windshield and across the room where it hit the wall and splattered.
One down,
Devin muttered as he got into fighting position. We stood at the passenger side of the van, one of us at each end and our backs to each other. The van would offer us a bit of protection for the first rush. We figured there would be 20 or so, but with the size of the gaps around the semi, they could only squeeze through one at a time. We would at least have an opportunity to thin the herd for as long as we could keep up with our initial onslaught. The concussion bat was ready in my hands, and the Reaper was waiting for me on top of the van. We had a very short moment to get our bearings before the first wave hit.
"What you working with?"
I asked him, so I would know when to get the hell out of the way.
"Well, picking what to use was like choosing between my own children. But for this particular endeavor, I went with my shoulder shredder and my contact ram."
In his right hand, he held a modified AR-15 pistol. It essentially looks like your average style military rifle, but the barrel is only 8 inches long, allowing quick firing in close quarters. He had modified it with a 50-round drum magazine and a sleeve for his monstrous upper arm, similar to the sleeves you see on the crutches used by people with long-term conditions. It allowed him to absorb the recoil and fire easily with just one hand. In his left hand was a CO2-powered ram fitted with the same type of sleeve, gun stock, and handle. When he pushed the end against the opponent and pulled the trigger, the gas pressure pushed out a steel shaft with a ram end. It would allow him to clear space when facing more than one of the demons, so he could get his shoulder shredder gun in there and do some work. I rolled my eyes at the ram. It was a chrome fist about the size of a softball and the middle finger up. Typical asshole Devin style. I know it's on my Christmas list this year, though. It would make a great shifter knob for my Prius. No sooner had I finished lusting after the fuck you fist, the demons started coming through the gaps. We ran head on and met them halfway. Devin made absurdly quick work of the first couple he encountered. The thunderous AR pistol cut through them with ridiculous ease.
"Those ain't 5.56 NATO rounds, boy. They're 308 Winchesters with a little extra Devon spice, also known as iron rounds."
It became quite obvious as the two he hit first were screaming on the ground, as the bullet holes expanded like wildfire as the iron seared into the flesh. My first opponent was about my own size, wielding a short sword. It pulled back for a big swipe, and I panicked for a second. But the concussion bat was at the ready. I swung in a tremendous arc with an uppercut to the chin that devastated its skull. But there was no fucking explosion. As a demon aimlessly waddled around blinded and with barely any capacity to breathe, I realized I had left the protective sleeve on. I barely gave him a horizontal whack to finish him off, then snapped the bat out to my right side. Just as I had hoped, the sleeve shot off like a missile and smashed against the firewall. It looked super badass, and there were two demons about 10 feet away that stopped dead in their tracks when they saw it. I took 2 big strides and was on them before they could move. My first swing was a wicked shot to the shoulder of the demon on my right side. The explosion blew right through it and out the neck, tossing a huge mess of flesh onto the face of the demon beside him. While it was stunned, I launched myself forward and flipped the bat so I could jam the skinny end into its neck. I ripped it back out and the demon fell dead in front of me. Devin continued to pump rounds out of his AR pistol, wasting no time in slaying anything that came out of the gap. They got wise to it though, and a few popped through in a somersault and found cover behind the busted concrete that was scattered about. One of them picked up a huge chunk and shoved it in Devin's direction with impressive speed. Devin turned to the side and took the hit to his shoulder. He hit the floor hard, and they were on him in an instant. I had 2 more coming my way. The first leaped over me in a front flip, and suddenly I was surrounded. I was trying to figure out my next move when a third showed up from out of nowhere and kicked me square in the chest. I hit the ground hard, but got up to my knees quickly with the bat still in hand. They were pressed tight against me, kicking and hitting with all they had. My new body was unbelievably resilient though, and I took the shots well. I caught a glimpse of Devin, who was in the same predicament, but on his back at the moment. He looked at me in the eyes and yelled, "Susan Sarandon!" A switch flipped in my brain, and I managed to wedge the concussion bat flat against my chest and shove the barrel in directly into the closest knee. The explosive did its job and blew the lower leg clean off. The demon screamed and fell backward, ending up perpendicular to Devin. Devin reached out a giant hand and jammed 2 fingers into the wounded demon's eyes, not stopping until his nails made contact with brain matter. I had cleared enough space to get a left-handed swing, putting my last explosive nodule under the chin of the demon directly to my right. Dead-on contact. Things were starting to fall into place for me. I stood up face to face with the last demon with extreme clarity. My mind was 2 steps ahead of my body, and I felt locked in on the demon's moves, and even seemed to be synchronizing with its thoughts. I knew what was coming, and effortlessly fended off every blow. Its last attempt was a swing at my neck with a spiked steel pipe. I ducked it easily, then shot upward as I grabbed its throat and launched us both in the air, landing it in a body slam 15 feet away into a piece of rebar. The demon was speared onto the twisted iron, which burned through the flesh at an incredible rate. I checked on Devin. He was down to 1 demon, but still on his back with the demon bent over him and choking him with 2 hands. He cleared enough space on his left side to get the end of his fuck you fist against the demon's chest and pulled the trigger. The impact was devastating, sending the demon straight up, its back slamming against the ceiling. When it fell back down, Devin was already on his feet. He caught the big demon over his head, then brought it down over his knee like a Bo Jackson bat snap. The demon folded completely in half. It was pure carnage. Dead demons lay everywhere, and their flesh seemed to be stuck on every surface. Devin looked over at me, tired, but full of fight.
What do you say we take this party outside?
I looked at him, wild-eyed.
Let's go kick someone in the dick.
I hopped up on the van with ease and grabbed my Reaper. Devin went to the yardwork supplies and grabbed a backpack-style leaf blower off of... Devin went to the yardwork supplies and grabbed a backpack-style leaf blower off of a hook on the wall. pulled the string to start the gas engine, then strapped it on and gave me a nod. I wasn't even going to bother to ask what it did, but I was sure it didn't blow leaves. He didn't have to say what was next. I knew we were about to make a grand entrance. Or was it an exit? We sprinted hard towards the big truck and rammed into it with our shoulders. The strength I possessed with the help of the demon blood was immense. Even the truck shot backwards several feet. I knew I had more power in me. We rammed it again, and this time kept pushing until it was well clear of the wall and out in the open. We backed off, but no one attacked. I took a look around, and the remaining demons were standing by the wall with their jaws dropped and a look of panic. To be fair, if I had just seen two guys shove a 20,000-pound semi-truck 25 feet, I wouldn't really be interested in taking an ass beating from them either. We stood in front of the truck, arms crossed and with shit-eating grins. This was over. Then, from around the corner, we heard a growl, and out walked what must have been the biggest demon to ever live. It had to have been 9 feet tall. If you've seen the movie 300, picture the big-ass creature thing the Immortals let loose. Yeah, it was that big. The other demons stepped back. I think I saw them passing an oxygen mask around. The giant slowly stepped forward, facing us, and in its thunderous, gravel-like voice, spat out a string of words directed at Devon. In his best Karen voice, Devon said,
"Well, that was a bit rude."
I put my arms back down, losing some confidence. Dude, what did he say?
My demon is a little rusty at times, but he mentioned your mother, a shoehorn, and a snaquetta.
I was getting pumped up. This dude just insulted my mom. What the heck is a snaquetta? Devon looked over at me.
You don't want to know. Trust me.
Now I was super pissed. What the hell, man? What does it do?
Lots of things, buddy. Lots of things.
Devon spoke back to it. Some sort of gibberish. But it wasn't exactly threatening. I was jumping up and down now. I didn't care how big he was. I was completely amped to kick this motherfucker's ass. Shit. I called him a motherfucker after he insulted my mother. What did you say back? A kick-ass threat?
Nah, I was giving him props for the insult.
I looked away. Dick? The big demon turned to his guys and went on a long rant. They started to perk up every time he said, "Devon." He didn't even know my name, but he kept pointing at me and everyone laughed and acted like they were smoothing their hair. I looked over at Devon. I guess I can't argue with that one. Devon put 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled loudly. The lesser demons all shut up and looked his way. They looked confident now, emboldened by their leader's words. Devon yelled something that was clearly meant to be insulting. They gasped and looked at their big hero. He turned around slowly and had murder in his eyes.
"Shit,"
Devon said under his breath. I whispered, "Dude, he looks really, really pissed. What the holy hell did you say?" Devon continued to stare straight ahead, trying to look intimidating.
"Well, I'm not exactly sure. I think I messed up a couple words there. Pretty sure I crossed a line."
The demon roared and raised its spear overhead. His troops did the same with their various melee weapons. Devon dropped his backpack blower and readied himself for a prize fight. The giant drew back and launched the spear with furious speed. Devon barely got out of the way before it jammed in the truck's radiator. They charged. Given how short the distance was, they didn't completely gas out before getting to us. But it at least gave us a shot to get a few good licks in on the first group before the rest recovered their strength. Devin was back on his feet and already going at it with their leader. The monster demon fought with fury. Every blow he dealt sounded like a boulder crashing into Devin's body. He was fast, and clearly had some fighting instruction. The other demons stayed away from him, so their leader could exact his revenge for whatever awful thing Devin had said to him. They hit each other with blow after blow, body slams, kicks, chokeholds, and the occasional flying knee. It was brutal. I had my Reaper in hand and was going full-blown Neo on 3 of these assholes while the others stayed back to catch their breath. Literally, their poor oxygen saturation was saving my life. Things slowed down for me as I cut and sliced with the wicked blade. I made quick work of the 3 opponents, their body parts scattered about, with surgical quality cuts through both flesh and bone. I got a hard blow to the back from what felt like a sledgehammer. I looked back. It was a fucking sledgehammer. My body was staying tough, but I was gasping for air after the impact emptied my lungs. It was on me before I could get a good breath back. Another joined. And just like that, I was taking kicks and punches to my midsection while a third very strong demon was trying to choke me out. I fought hard, but it wasn't enough. As I started to lose consciousness, things quieted down, and all I could hear were the grunts and sharp air movement of Devin and the big demon going toe-to-toe. I managed to turn my head towards them, to look, and saw Devin let loose a brutal series of punches, then drive his shoulder into his opponent, sending the monster headfirst into the truck's grill. The slight turn of my head was just enough for my neck muscles to hold back some of the demon's arm, while my airway opened back up. I fought for a couple good breaths, and suddenly was energized. I slammed 3 elbow shots home, breaking ribs in the asshole behind me. He let go and I dropped to my knees, snatched up the Reaper, and took a hard swing behind me with the bottom end. One of the Tritons shot directly through his skull. The others had stepped back a bit, and I ripped the weapon from his head and twirled it back to the blade as I hopped up. As I got my bearings back, I took a look. I saw there were about a dozen demons in front of me. I readied my weapon, but they were looking toward Devin and their boss's battle in front of the truck. Their faces showed shock and terror. I whirled around to see a beaten and bloody Devin standing next to their humongous hero, unconscious from his collision with the truck. He looked over at me, and the dozen creatures who had completely stopped their effort to beat the piss out of me, and screamed as he grabbed the battering ram attached to the front of the truck. In a feat of strength beyond anything I could have imagined, he very slowly lifted the front end of the truck. It had to have been at least 2,000 pounds at the nose. He raised it to a height of about 2 feet, then dropped the wheel onto the giant's skull. It took several seconds for everyone to come out of their trance Devin's actions had created. I could hardly believe just about anything at this point. But what I had just seen was almost beyond comprehension. Devin had a smile on his face.
Don't nobody worry. I'll clean this up.
He reached down and grabbed his backpack blower, pulled the starter, and fired it up. It didn't make a gas engine sound, though. It sounded like something else. I couldn't put my finger on it. Then it hit me.
Iron Man!
Devin screamed over the sound of a charge building. And just like that, he pulled the trigger that should have pushed air out to blow some fall foliage around. And with a thump sound, out came a baseball-sized projectile. The speed wasn't anything phenomenal, maybe 90 miles an hour, but it had spines like a sea urchin, and it stuck to the first victim on contact. Then, nothing. No, really, nothing. The demons chuckled a bit, then began to laugh hysterically. The one with the spiny round stuck to him looked down at it and also laughed. Then Devin started laughing, and the laughter of the entire group grew louder. Devin looked at me, so I began to laugh too. For a moment, everyone had just completely forgot about the situation and had a great time finding humor in Devin's dud round. Devin even pulled back the hose and looked down inside, as if to see what happened, then shrugged his shoulders and doubled over with more laughter. Then, laughing the entire time, Devin snapped back up and fired off 11 more shots with absolute precision, raised a little chrome "fuck you" fist at the end of his left arm, and pushed a button on the leaf blower's handle. Everyone exploded. Several hours later, having cleaned up and buried the carcass of 36 enemies with Devin's backhoe, we hung out in the remains of his lair. The warm breeze, finally free of the stench of death, drifted in slowly through the giant hole in the wall as we sat in front of the control panel with our feet up and cold beers in our hands. The remaining enemy, which included the humans who were operating the big gun and what we presumed were more in the SUVs, had all taken off immediately after Devin detonated the spiny rounds from the leaf blower. They were beaten, and they knew it. They would probably try again one day, but not today. Not fucking today.
Well, Devin, what now?
He looked confused, as if this wasn't out of the ordinary.
We go back to kicking ass. I've had a few calls for some work overseas. Maybe we'll pick up one of those jobs. There's a lot of assholes out there that need handled by the Big D.
I raised an eyebrow.
You, Big D, handle assholes. Fuck you, kid.
We clinked our beers together. Fuck you too, Devin.
Greetings, friends and fiends. It is I, Chronicler. We here at Creepy Spaghet would like to thank HGTV Neighbor for allowing us to tell their story. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on these terrible tales. And make sure to check out the author in the links below. If you're interested in having your story narrated, be sure to reach out to our humble overseer, as he continues his journey to pull the darkest stories from the infinite depths of the internet. Until next time, fiends. And remember, we are darkness.